You guys can keep an eye on us with regards to the auction watch along tomorrow. And I say that because we welcome a man who, of course, goes down in IPL history for many things. I'm talking about our beloved Charu Sharma, who, of course, have pulled him out of a cricket tournament. Apparently, he's back in the comfort of his house. Charu, house proceedings, and good to see you in Monday Night Live.
Well, thank you so much. I must quickly apologize because of this cricket tournament that I was playing. It's our alumni pentangular. I was playing in Indore. There was so much shouting going on in the field. I was kind of skipping the first couple of games, and you got to shout all over the place for people to pay attention and move around. My throat's gone for a 6, but I hope it recovers in time. I have a couple of assignments, not the auction tomorrow, but I have a couple of other assignments where I will have to speak. So I'm sounding a lot worse than I do normally, but thank you for having me, Abhinav.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a pleasure indeed. And I'm sure Akshay and Nikhil will jump in with some questions. And I'm sure the people in the comments as well want to ask you a few things. We have you for a short time, but I'll try to squeeze in as much as possible. Last time around, I know, obviously, it was an absolute fantasy. Did you ever kind of expect that in your wildest dreams? Were you told by the BCCI at that point in time that, look, I mean, in case of anything unforeseen, you'll be the man?
Are you kidding? Simple answer, 2-letter word, no. I mean, I wasn't really, if you want to go back to the history of a couple of years ago, I wasn't even really paying much attention to the auction at all because, I mean, people call it a mega auction and what have you because there were new teams. But, I mean, I'm not on the auction block and I'm not going for a few crores. So I don't really, I'm good luck to the teams and who they get. So it was a complete bolt out of the blue. I was just very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. I live in Bangalore. The auction was in Bangalore at a hotel next door to me. It was a 2-minute drive. And so everything kind of fell into place really quickly because when I got the call, I was able to respond very quickly. And, it was great fun here because as a lot of people may or may not know, I am a legitimate auctioneer, having done many auctions for many sporting or otherwise events. So it was just a very easy slip in.
Charu, so great to have you here. Again, big fanboy personally. Yeah, and also I'm a big fan of Kabaddi as well, what you've done with PKL. Been following it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing it. It's great. It's great to watch, when sports like these sort of, get a platform on TV and the way it's sort of garnered eyeballs. But I'm a hardcore RCB fan. So, of course, I have to take you all the way back to 2008 when, IPL came into being. Because you were a part of it then. Yeah, it might not have been the greatest of seasons for us. Sure, I get the reaction. I know I, for one, wasn't happy. I was a 10-year-old kid then just crying day and day. Oh, my goodness, come on, please win. But just want to know, because first season of IPL, we're venturing into the unknowns. We're not really sure what's going to happen, how to go for it, how to plan for the auctions, what's up. How was it like? Because building a team, we've heard from other, sort of people on the periphery of how they went about it and all of that. What was it like at the RCB setup? Like, how was it? How was the entire environment? How was it? Because I remember the likes of Russell Crowe and all of them being a part of the opening ceremony. I've heard of anecdotes here and there and all of that. Please do let us know.
Martin Crowe, anyway. Yeah, why would you want to rake up that memory for me? I mean, what are you, some enemy of mine? What, you a sadist or what? But it was, the whole process itself was fabulous because nothing beats the first time, right? I mean, the first cut is always the deepest. And all of us were given very, very little time. I questioned myself about why I thought it'll be nice to look after a team rather than continue commentating as I was for many, many decades before that. But I just thought it was all very nice and new and exciting. And in the main, it was. And why was I disappointed on a personal level? Because I tend not to work too hard in my life, I'll confess. I'm kind of, easy come, easy go. But those 3 or 4 months that we had, and that's all the time we had anyway, about 3.5 months or so, I have never worked harder because everything was just so short on time and so much work to do. And there was so much learning for everybody. I was sort of off the game, but most of the others who were managing the other teams or CEOs of the other teams weren't. So I'm going to sound a little immodest. There was a lot of leaning on me, saying, okay, what do we do now? Where do we go now? What happens? So very exciting in that respect. But, owners sometimes are the way they are. And I kind of, I think, grossly underestimated what would be the situation in terms of the ownership and their interference and everything else. Because after all, if you own the team, you have a right to interfere, I suppose, even though one shouldn't. But now I can teach a lot of people about and in fact, my self-styled PhD now, self-styled, is in why should somebody and who should be the one to own a team in a sports league. So if you want a long lecture, not today, I'll give it to you one later, because you need to have the right people for the right reasons, more importantly. So it all ended very badly for me, and I must confess I'm still a little petty about it. I still feel bad at what happened. And why did RCB lose so much is one of those things here. Virtually the same team was runner-up the next year. So there wasn't something fundamentally wrong with the team. They lost a few narrow, typical last ball, first whatever, one ball and stuff like that. Or and the morale suffered hugely because of just the way the team was handled once I left. So, they just could never recover. And I'm sorry that a 10-year-old was very upset at that point of time. But wasn't my fault. I wasn't bowling, I wasn't batting, and I wasn't taking the catches or dropping them. But yeah, the atmosphere got very strange in the dressing room thereafter, and they couldn't recover. But essentially, it wasn't a bad bunch of people. And the story of getting that team together, not only the team, but the whole, league together from the management angle as well. There are 1,000 stories, yeah. So I'll have to save it up for a little later.
Just a quick couple ones from the comments before we let you go. Kanan's asking you an obvious one. How is the preparation for an auctioneer like before the auction? And even more so in your case, where it was pretty much back of the hand stuff, right?
Well, so whatever I say now is actually superfluous because I went in there with zero preparation. So what's the preparation for an auctioneer? Zero, nothing. But no, that's not the truth. There is an auction book, which is basically all the names that need to be auctioned and the various categories. Auctioneering, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is like, if you have an IQ of 10, you can be a reasonably good auctioneer because there isn't much of a skill, as it were. There are kinds and kinds of auctions. So I'm going to say this very quickly to Kanan. The most difficult ones are the charity auctions. And I've done many of those where you're trying to sell something to raise money for charity, because then you have to push people. You have to infuse a lot of humor and personal stuff. And come on, Kanan, bid for this. The money is going to go to children who are in need and so on and so forth. And you keep pushing and cajoling people. That's the worst because, you get fed up of pushing and cajoling and people are looking, saying, hey, spare me, don't look at me, and so on and so forth. But a professional auction doesn't really need much in terms of an auctioneer's knowledge even, because you go in there and a standard auctioneer, and I've done many auctions for, say, carpets or whatever else it may be, or furniture, or being a regular auctioneer, and of course many sporting auctions as well. I mean, you get a name in non-human auctions, it's lot number, 24, let's begin, or in human auctions, it's Avanish Hegde. Next up, let's go. So, and the one thing an auctioneer should not necessarily, or most times do, is push. In, say, the IPL auction, I'm not going to push a player. All players are the same. So one has to be very careful to not push because you could be seen as favoring somebody. So neutrality, I suppose, is very important, which comes easy to me. And you say, okay, next, Avanish Hegde. Base price, 20 lakhs. Who wants to give me 20? And you begin and you go for. So it's a very, very elementary, virtually non-skilled work. So anybody can do it. You guys, easy. Yes, it helps to know the language really well in which you're auctioneering because you don't be stuck for words. And you have to keep a pretty sharp eye and a mind on who's bidding what and carrying it on. There are a couple of very small auction rules, as it were. I don't want to bore you with it, but it's a very, very elementary job. I just think that because not much happens in India in terms of auctions, people tend to value it like, oh my God, auctioneer. It's almost a non-job really in terms of skill. Sorry, I don't mean to demean it, but if you're interested in the truth, Kanan, that's the truth. So very little preparation, except perhaps on pronunciation. You want to try and get that right. Most of the Goras don't get a lot of Indian names right, but all of us get a lot of the Firangi name right. So, it's just one of those things. That's all you need to prepare. And otherwise, if it's on television, you need to also pay attention to what the television demands are in terms of a break and this, that, and the other. But I'll finish very quickly by saying it's an extremely elementary job.